Good day and welcome to the latest Rand Swiss weekly wrap. As always, we'll go over what happened this week and how it's going to affect your investments. So we'll start off today in looking at Europe, G7 and Russia, the whole combination of those factors. So what's happened is that the G7 has come out and they've talked about putting a cap on Russian oil. So what they want to do is they want to have Russia produce oil because they can't afford to have Russia take its oil off the market. They can't sanction Russia to an extent that that oil does not get back onto the market. Because if that didn't happen, oil prices will spike up because there's a lack of supply. At the same time, they don't want Russia to make too much money. In fact, at the moment, Russia is making more money from oil and gas than it did last year because oil prices are so much higher. So despite the fact that they are seeing quantities come down, the higher oil price has made them more money. So the Russians are making money. So what the Europeans and the Americans and like the Japanese, etc., are looking at the G7 effectively is trying to figure out a way to make sure that Russia produces oil, produces natural gas, but doesn't make too much money from it. In fact, just barely breaks even from the transaction. Very difficult to do when the market price of oil and gas is very high at the moment. So Russia, if it's sold in the market, would make a huge profit from each unit it's sold. So what the idea has been is that the G7, due to their massive amount of financial power, effectively, this is talking about the largest countries in the world, effectively, excluding like places like China and India. Some of the largest countries in the world getting together and deciding on how to basically manage a system that they effectively control, okay, or how to use that power of the system they control to their best, advantage. So what they've decided to do is kind of like a sideward kind of move. It's like a slide move. It would only work if you are so dominant, you have absolute superiority when it comes to the financial sector. This is the only way such a move will work. So what is this move? What they're going to do is they're going to use their effectively reputational power, use their ability to basically provide things like insurance and other financial services to say that anyone that wants to import Russian oil, either by transporting it via their carriers or buy it as an industrial company or as a country or whatever, has to agree to not pay more than a certain amount for that oil. If they don't do that, then they will not be given access to insurance and to other financial facilities that are available to the rest of the world. It's a very interesting way to approach this. What they're saying is that we control the effective infrastructure of the financial system. And we're going to use the fact that we control the infrastructure of the financial system to ensure that countries that are outside, the G7, and companies and entities, etc., will obey what we want to. Because if you want access to that infrastructure, you've got to do what we say. And this is quite a powerful move. At the same time, it's also a very dangerous move. Why? Because we've already seen moves by Russia and China. They're not huge countries here, but they are relative to the G7. But they're significant countries. Try to initiate some kind of BRICS system. BRICS being, of course, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. We are in there. That's going to be separate from the American system, or the G7 system, or the Western system, whatever you want to call it, the American, European / Japanese system. Why? Because they want to have some kind of independence from the power of the G7, from the power of these Western, US-aligned parties. And if you basically see what the Americans are able to do at the moment, and the Americans include NATO and the EU, how we want to put them together, are able to do at the moment with regards to using their financial dominance to manipulate markets, to change pricings, to basically exclude or include people into the system. If you're someone like the leader of India or leader of China or leader of Russia or any other smaller country, maybe a place like Brazil, includes South Africa, Indonesia, those kind of places, you're going to say to yourself, hey, I want to have an alternative. I want to have some ability not to have to basically rely entirely on this system that is totally outside my control. And to give you a further indication of the power of the system, so this week Russia was declared to have defaulted on its debt. That means it has not paid back its debt. Not because Russia can't pay back its debt, not because Russia doesn't want to pay back its debt. Russia has plenty of money to pay back because it has made all this money from oil and natural gas. And Russia definitely wants to pay the debt. The reason being is that there's no conduit to actually transfer the money from Russia to the people that own the debt. That's the issue. Russia basically can't give the money. They have the money set aside in escrow. They basically, it's protected, it's like set aside. They'll pay it if they could, but they can't actually get the money to the bondholders. Why? Because nobody wants to transfer the money across because of the reputational or other risks that come along with dealing with Russian funds. And that's the kind of power the Western financial system has. If there was an alternative Chinese system or Indian system, Russia would just pay through that system to its bondholders, and it would not be in default. But right now, just the fact that it has to rely on the system, because everybody does rely on that same system, shows that effectively they are hostage to the system. And we are going to see, I think, extreme pressure from places like China and perhaps in India and places like Indonesia and Pakistan and all the other significant developing world countries get together and probably look at some kind of alternative methodology or system to get away from that. The next thing is, of course, in South Africa, we have to talk about it, is load shedding. Load shedding has become a major issue in this country. We're into level 6 this week. Level 6 is basically 6,000, I think, megawatts of the system. We got it in a couple thousand megawatts of going to load level 8. If you look at that little kind of like schedules they gave, I mean, those that don't remember, when they first came out, it was 1 to 4. 4 was the highest thing they would give you as like the level. Then I think a few years ago we hit 6 for a brief period of time. Then we went to had 8 on the schedule. Now there's a possibility we might hit 8. Why is this? A couple of reasons. Firstly, we've had incredible corruption in the sector. We've seen, of course, the Guptas attacked it. We've seen a number of different state bodies basically being corrupted, especially around the energy sector. Because why? There's a lot of money there. It's one of the biggest, pies out there that you can basically look to attack. So it's been, a lot of corruption. But also what we've seen is that workers have also gotten used to quite a cushy deal at Eskom. Eskom workers make quite a bit of money, way above the national average. They get nice paychecks, they get nice increases every year, way above the national average as well. So they start high and they get higher. And so one of the things that we've seen is that this week industrial action at some Eskom plants meant that supply was disrupted. There has been intimidation, there has been sabotage possibly, all very illegal things. Even the act of striking for an Eskom employee is illegal because it's an essential service. You can't go and strike as a doctor, you can't strike as somebody working in the electrical sector like that, or at Eskom. However, in this country, as you know, what's legal and what's basically allowed is totally different. So they have gotten the attention of the minister, Pravin Gordhan. They've gotten some concessions given to them, so it kind of worked out in their favor. We still haven't gotten back on track yet, but that might be something that happens over the next couple of weeks. That being said, this is a short-term solution. We need to have some kind of real long-term solution. Perhaps the independent power providers kind of thing might be a solution. However, that has also been under pressure because Gwede only approved about 2,000 megawatts or 3,000 megawatts of extra power when I think that about 10,000 was bid. So 10 people came there and said we have 10,000 megawatts to bid. He's only approved about 3,000 of those things, about 30%. In a country as in dire need of power as South Africa, that's an incredibly, I think, short-sighted kind of measure. And of course, as you know, whenever we have load shedding, the rand's going to be affected. And we've had the rand, weaken dramatically on the news. By the way, I don't know if you guys were following me. If you're not on our news or on our mailing list, you may have missed it. But we did send a warning out at the rand at 1585. As soon as it appeared as a possibility that we're going to go to level 6, we sent out a warning to people to say, look at getting to dollars. And had you done that in about 2 or 3 days, you would have basically saved yourself about 50 cents, which is not an insignificant amount of money. We're talking about 50 cents, as an exchange, for like you do $1 million. That's 50,000 rands. That's not nothing. So it's quite an interesting time for us in South Africa at the moment. It's quite an important, I think, point in terms of where we are as a country, an inflection point. If we can't sort out this electricity problem, everything else falls apart. We will not have enough ability to basically grow because it's going to be a bottleneck that stops us from growing because electricity is required for growth. If we don't have the electricity, we cannot grow, we cannot increase our GDP. It's going to be a kind of like a stone around our neck until that point is done. And right now, the fact of the matter is we've been looking at this electricity issue for more than a decade without a solution. So there's going to be something that I think that Unless that's solved, every other problem in the country becomes worse because of it. And a couple last things. Firstly, it's a little more speculative. When we first started talking about the food crisis, the inflation crisis back in March, those that follow my articles know that I've been talking about this for several months now. I talked about the two areas that were most under pressure. Three areas that will be under pressure, but the two most under. 3 areas under pressure are going to be South America, Africa, South Asia, and right now South Asia, which is India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, it seems to be the first place in which things are really going badly. Pakistan has come out with a 20+% inflation rate. We know Sri Lanka's economy has collapsed. It is absolutely been destroyed. Afghanistan, it has not been in a great situation, and it's getting worse. And Nepal has also had some issues recently. But the big one that's been is kind of we look at is India, the biggest economies in the world. They've actually had issues. We know about the fact that they've had that food export ban. That's going to be to a certain extent, they're still exporting food, but only under prior agreements and only to countries. You can't, as a private exporter, export to whoever you want to. They can pay the price from India. But also now we've seen a slate of tax increases because the government is trying to do something about the fact that the rupee, which is their currency, has fallen quite dramatically to, I think, all-time lows. They're trying to put some kind of tariffs on oil and on gold to prevent outflows of currency, which is an important fact to look at. Next, in China, we had some statements out of Xi Jinping. He basically has come out and said that zero COVID is going to be the policy of China at least until 2026. The Chinese have, as you know, had an incredibly strict reaction to COVID. They locked down places with over 100 million people, and the lockdowns that we in South Africa have never experienced. Literally locked into your house. It's a totally different level of lockdown. You can't get food even. Sometimes if the government doesn't deliver any food, you're basically going to starve almost. This is something that's going to continue to 2026. Why? The Chinese government has been using their own homegrown vaccine, which is not anywhere near as efficient or as effective as the international vaccines. And also, the Chinese population has virtually no natural immunity because, to a certain extent, China's success in basically blocking previous versions of COVID from the country has meant that their population, unlike most parts of the world, has almost no natural immunity to the disease. It's all vaccine or basically going to be nothing. And finally, one thing I think we need to keep an eye out is what's happening in Europe. Until about a few weeks ago, I thought the Europeans might be able to get away with, with this winter, with supplies from the US and other supplies, making up their allotment for natural gas for winter. Remember, winter starts really soon in the Western Hemisphere. Like 3 or 4 months from now, it's going to start to get very cold there, and they need to have heating over the winter. It's not like South Africa where you can put a blanket on. There, it's really, really cold. You need to have some kind of heat source. Right now, I think that might not be the possibility. We might see a situation in which Europe is going to be short of gas, short of energy over the winter period. And what you must understand that this is the largest economy in the world. It's huge. It rivals easily the US, and it's certainly bigger than the Chinese in terms of total size. If those people basically need stuff, they have the money to buy it. If they start looking at the market and start buying up energy resources, expect incredible increases in oil prices, gas prices, energy prices approaching the European summer. If they cannot get a stable supply of gas outside of from the Russians, if they basically have some issues again with the Americans supplying them because of disasters at their terminals, etc., we are going to find a situation where the rest of the world is going to suffer because the European effectively bear is going to come in and take up all the excess supply in the world because they're going to need it for winter, and they have much more money than virtually anywhere else. And so we could be easily seeing oil prices, gas prices spike substantially during the European winter. And like I said, that's not a long period away. That's basically 3 to 4 months away from now. We're going to start to see those places getting colder and that demand for energy rising quite sharply. Okay, on that pessimistic note, thanks for joining me again, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Cheers.